Yesterday, MLSE decided to part ways with president of the Toronto Raptors and vice chairman Masai Ujiri. In a press release, they said, during his 13 seasons with the Raptors, Masai has helped transform the organization on the court and has been an inspirational leader off of it, said MLSE president and CEO Keith Pelley. He brought an NBA championship to Toronto and urged us to believe in this city and ourselves. We are grateful for all he has done and wish him and his family the very best. As we plan for the franchise's future and its return to the NBA playoffs, a search for the successor as president of the Raptors, led by CAA Executive Search, will begin immediately. Let's pause there because that last line is a very important note. A search for the successor as president of the Raptors, led by CAA Executive Search, will begin immediately. It has long been rumored that Masai Ujiri would be relieved of his duties as president of the Toronto Raptors. MLSE for a long time was owned by Bell, Rogers, and Larry Tannenbaum. And in mid-2024, Bell and Rogers reached an agreement where Bell would sell their shares, which was 37.5% of Maple Leaf Sports and Entertainment, to Rogers. And since Rogers has been gaining control of the company, now we don't know that the deal has officially gone through and been completed, but the intentions are to sell them and the deal will be finalized pending all the lawyers that need to be paid to fulfill the contracts and the sending over of the shares. But Rogers has been gaining control of the company in the day-to-day operations. They have put in place Keith Pelley, who was in that statement, who said those kind words about Masai, and he has been taking over the various franchises that MLSE owns, which includes TFC, the Toronto Argos, the Toronto Raptors, and the Toronto Maple Leafs. And Toronto FC, the Toronto Argos, and the Toronto Maple Leafs have all fired their president within the last 2 months. The TFC one and the Toronto Argo ones went down a little earlier, and then the Maple Leafs one went down last month, and then now everyone's like, Rogers hates that executive role. We all know that. They want Keith Pelley, who is the head honcho there at MLSE, to run the whole thing. That is what the board of Ed Rogers and his many other Rogers family members wants to get done here with MLSE and how they want the company to be structured from the top downward. So slowly, the president's role has been fizzling out at the pro sports teams they own. So when this press release was released, it was a shock to many in the industry that MLSE would be looking to fulfill this role of president for the Toronto Raptors. And we're not sure if the CAA Executive Search team will come to the conclusion that they do need a president or that role will be filled, but that is a shock that MLSE will try and get a new president in there. So we know that MLSE-run Rogers does not like presidents. They don't like it for two specific reasons: the cost for executives. Masai Ujiri was not only one of the highest paid executives in the NBA, he was one of the highest paid executives in the whole of North America. And Rogers has never been happy with the contract that Masai Ujiri signed with the Toronto Raptors. Back in 2021, when he was negotiating this deal with then board of Bell, Rogers, and Larry Tannenbaum, they had a very public fight that went down, and Masai was very angry and disrespected by the Rogers side of MLSE. In this Doug Smith article from 2021, Doug Smith wrote, "The sources said sometime after the meeting, Rogers called Ujiri and told him he wasn't worth the money he was being paid. The NBA source said the call left Ujiri feeling so angry and disrespected by Rogers that he considered taking a year off as president of the Raptors." So we know for 4 years now, the Rogers side of MLSE has not wanted to pay Masai Ujiri this money. As soon as they have gained control of this corporation, that is a move they have immediately done as soon as it is reasonably possible for them to do it. The NBA draft went down on Wednesday and Thursday. Day afterwards, season's over. We have control of this company. He has a year left on his contract, but it's a good time to get rid of him. We can pay out the year and then he's gone. And that is what they have done. So that's the one reason why Rogers has done this: to control. They want Keith Pelley to run the whole thing. They want the general managers of the pro sports teams to report to Keith Pelley, who can act as the liaison to the board. They don't want these presidents going around Keith Pelley or to the board or reporting to Keith Pelley. They want him in charge of everything. The general managers who control the personnel talk to Keith, who then talks to the board, who gets to be the head honcho to run the whole corporation. That is what Rogers wants. So I'm going to continue with the press release, but I feel like that background information on Rogers and Masai not liking each other, them not liking presidents, them not wanting to pay money, is great background onto why this whole thing went down, and then we can get into the rest of it, because there's so many little things, and we can talk about if this is a good decision. So I'm going to continue the press release here. As the search for a new team president commences, Raptors front office leadership remains in place with extensions for key personnel, including general manager Bobby Webster. Per team policy, terms of the deals will not be released. And then they say they're confident in Bobby Webster, in his ability, and it's a great place, and they have a plan for next season and beyond. And then they have some kind words about Ujiri here at the bottom. Ujiri was named president of the Raptors in 2013, joining the team from the Denver Nuggets. Under his leadership, the Raptors won the 2019 NBA championship, the first and only team outside of the United States to do so. He is also co-founder of Giants of Africa, an organization which uses sport as a tool to enrich the lives of youth on the continent and encourage them to dream big. The day-to-day workings of the Toronto Raptors won't change. Their plan on the court will not change. Bobby Webster, who's the general manager, has been in charge for a little bit here. Masai Ujiri was the last in the chain of command for decisions, but the personnel and having the team built around Ingram and Scottie and Barrett next year, all of that is with Bobby Webster's blessing and his plan, so none of that's really going to change. But what will change without Masai Ujiri is the spirit of Masai Ujiri not being within this organization, because what Masai brought to this team in terms of culture isn't replaceable by a next general manager. It's not replaceable because you can't just drop another Masai Ujiri into the situation. He is a one of one. And I thought Josh Lewenberg had a good little tweet thread that summarized what Masai brought to this organization. He said, the Raptors were an NBA afterthought when Ujiri took over in 2013. 5-year playoff drought, 1 playoff series win in their existence. Every star they ever had forced their way out. Since 8 playoff appearances, 9 series wins, 1 NBA championship. He completely reshaped their culture and image. Ujiri turned the Raptors into a world-class organization, shifting the way teams, players, fans view Toronto. But his legacy is the way he changed how this market views itself. His pride and passion for the team, city, and country, how he lifted it up. We the North, that's how he'll be remembered. And that, I think, is so important. That we the North ethos is what Masai brought to the Toronto Raptors. He made it so the uniqueness of the franchise being the only Canadian franchise in the NBA wasn't something to be embarrassed about or to look at as a weird, unique thing. It was something to be proud about. And that was the one thing that gets the whole fan base together. We are different from the other 29 teams in the NBA. We the North. And that was all Masai's doing. He made this fan base and this team proud of this team, and the results speak for themselves on the court with the NBA championship they had in 2019. So that is what MLSE is losing, and Raptors fans are losing, and the organization is losing by parting ways with Masai Ujiri. It's a tough thing to say whether or not this is the right time to move off of Masai Ujiri. We know Rogers was going to do this. They don't like him. So fine. It was always going to happen, and I guess that's just something we need to come to grips with. It's not something you could fight on because they have control of the team now, and they are going to make the decisions. I'm personally not a fan of one giant telecom owning all of my favorite pro sports teams in my city, and us losing Masai Ujiri, who is a heart and soul of the Toronto Raptors when he was here. But there was a lot of complaints from other people within the league, executives, that Masai Ujiri, by the end of it, became very hard to work with in terms of transactions with other teams. There was a sense of him being a little stuck in his ways and a little hard to deal with because of how much belief he had in himself. But I never saw that with any type of fear for him to make transactions. Like post Kawhi, he was never afraid to move big name players that were like fan favorites, like moving Siakam and losing Van Fleet and Kyle Lowry having to leave the team. All of the big pieces of that championship team are gone. The OG trade, throw that in there. So I never got a sense that he would hold on to these players. Maybe he held on to them for a little too long. Maybe he should have held on longer, but those players, I think, expired their time in Toronto. So I don't really have a problem with the on-court decisions that the Raptors made during the later stages of his tenure. Obviously, they haven't made the playoffs for a little bit, but there are swings and ups and downs with franchises, and I don't think Masai was entirely to blame for that. They won. Things kind of trended downwards after that. And pro sports teams go through these transitions. No player sticks around forever. No GM, no head coach sticks around forever. There is always transition periods. It's disappointing to me, however, that Masai doesn't seem to be given a fair shake here, because people within the organization who are above him, which isn't many, were never a fan of him and were not a fan of the money he was making. For somebody who built up the Raptors into what they are today, and they were nothing before he got here, there should have been a little bit more grace with this individual, and I feel like that grace was lost for Masai, who deserves all of the love for the rest of his life for what he brought to this city and to this country. Let me know what you think about this in the Jesse Blake Sports Report YouTube comments under this video, and while you're there, hit like and hit subscribe. Are you going to miss Masai? Because I'm definitely going to miss Masai. Do you think the decision was made too hastily, too early? Let me know what you think. Thank you for being here. You could have been anywhere in the world, which shows you watching or listening, and I appreciate you for that. Good night from Toronto.